Let's go to the story now. The Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa is calling for an independent inquiry into the deaths of young people at the Enyobeni tragedy. Now, let's take you back a bit just to remind you of what happened here. 21 teenagers, 9 girls, 12 boys, aged between 13 and 17 died in this tragedy. Now, of course, you'd remember how there was shock when we saw visuals and even pictures circulating on social media of what is said to have happened here. Calls for accountability were growing. Now, on the 19th of August, we saw the owner making his first court appearance, accused of violating the Liquor Act. And remember, he's joined in the dock by his wife. And now the case is expected back in court on the 25th of this month. And this is after the state introduced a new prosecutor, and more than 4 months after this tragedy happened, the families still don't have access to the toxicology reports. They were told that they will need to make applications to be able to get access to this. At some point, they were being told that their children died from suffocating. And you'd remember when you read various reports, parents not being convinced that this is all that happened here. So let's speak to Terri-Liza Fortein, who's with the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance, and she is the spokesperson there. Thank you so much for your time. Your organization has laid a complaint with the Human Rights Commission. What exactly are you complaining about?
So as South Africans, we all have the right to safety and security. And we do believe that the Enyobeni 21 had a right to be protected. We have legislation that clearly states children under the age of 18 should not be purchasing or consuming alcohol. So where were the enforcement authorities to ensure that these laws are enforced? And so we've lodged a complaint with the Human Rights Commission to take a look and examine who should be held accountable for these 21 young lives that have been lost, and an entire community that just has been absolutely shattered by this tragedy. So we want the Human Rights Commission to take a look at who really should be held accountable, and also looking forward to them concluding their investigation and making recommendations to government on how this kind of tragedy can be avoided in the future.
Have you received any response?
So we have received an acknowledgement of receipt from the Human Rights Commission, and we've also written several letters to follow up on the complaint that we have lodged. But we haven't really received any feedback on when they expect to conclude their investigation or any other further progress in the matter, but we are engaging with them on an ongoing basis.
It's been, over 4 months, and it's such a difficult time for the families still, because they don't have all these answers that they're looking for. I'm sure you've engaged them. What are they going through at this time?
So there are several families involved. Remember, there are the 21 young people that have passed on, but there are also the survivors of the Enyobeni tragedy, some who have been in hospital for months. And I'm sure you can imagine, with so many unanswered questions, they do need closure, they do need healing. So we need to know what happened, and we need accountability. Previous media reports have also stated that the families are not happy with the tavern owners only facing charges related to underage drinking. They have called for charges to be added, and we have heard the NPA saying they will consider that. But very much a feeling of wanting closure, wanting to know, what happened, wanting answers, and also wanting those responsible to be held to account. And as the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa, we also want government to be held accountable, and we also want them to look at legislation currently governing alcohol sales and alcohol trade. We want them to look at expediting the passing of the Liquor Amendment Bill of 2016, because there's a lot in there that can go a long way to reduce alcohol harm and prevent incidents like the Enyobeni tragedy from reoccurring.
And of course, then one looks at the fact that, when they were told that their children, died from suffocation, and at the same time, there was that request by them to have access to the toxicology report, and they were told of the processes that need to unfold there. Where are they saying the bottlenecks are with getting their hands on this toxicology report?
Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to give you a conclusive answer on that. And I also just want to clear up that we have lodged a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, and we are a public health NGO working to ensure that we reduce alcohol harm in our communities. And we are collaborating with the families in this matter, as well as the South African Council of Churches in East London. So we are working with them, because we have common purpose in ensuring alcohol safer communities. But you can pose that question directly to them. But as far as I can confirm, I don't have any conclusive answer to that at this point, other than what was last on record to say that they haven't been provided access to the toxicology report, although it is ready and it has been completed.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put in that question to them. Let's talk about another issue that they did raise, especially when their children were killed, and they highlighted this to say that, underage drinking is such a huge issue in their community, because their children don't even have basic amenities to be able to, pass time, also be able to go to a library and read books and all of that. I wonder, as you say that you're working with the South African Council of Churches, are you also going to try and hopefully, see if you can lobby for some of these amenities that they were crying for? And one looks at the fact that, it's been more than 4 months. There's not even movement in that particular regard. And we can only expect that if this happens, possibly more young people could go again and engage in underage drinking.
Look, the situation is an urgent situation. I'm sure you're aware the festive season is approaching. We're dealing pins down after exams. So our young people are at risk, and we really need to do more to ensure that they channel their energies in the correct direction, that they get the correct messaging, and that they don't engage in this harmful drinking. As the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa, we are not anti-alcohol, but we are anti-alcohol harm. And we certainly are anti-underage drinking. It affects brain development, it affects your decision-making capabilities, and we definitely need to prioritize our kids looking to more avenues for enjoyment rather than just consuming alcohol.
And I do hope one day we speak again. I'm told I've got one question, and Terri-Liza, you're talking about something that is a concern, underage drinking. I suppose for you as an organization, I'm going to throw a question that's also not related to Enyobeni, but some of the videos we see disturbingly on social media of toddlers that have been given alcohol by their parents, and people are making fun of these videos. And essentially this is also adding on to part of the problem when it comes to the underage drinking and some of the policies that really need to be strengthened.
Yes, so we have this normalization of alcohol in our societies and in our communities, and the harmful drinking challenges are plenty. You've mentioned now the underage drinking. You've also mentioned parents giving children alcohol, which basically puts them at risk, and also, as I mentioned earlier, can affect their brain development as they grow up. And I think it's time for us to really put this whole issue of alcohol harm at the very top of our agenda, because it impacts our communities so negatively on so many levels, including people who drink and then drive. We also know that alcohol is a driver for GBV, because people engage in harmful drinking and violence follows. So it's definitely an issue that we need to put at the top of the agenda, and that we need to look at really addressing and reducing, the negative impact that harmful drinking has on our communities. As you just mentioned, kids, teenagers, even adults, because it's very important for us to ensure that we start turning back the tide, and we start actually really addressing this issue, because it's really going to be a public health benefit if we can strengthen the legislation and also strengthen the enforcement, because that's also a very important aspect. What do people do when they do see that kind of thing that you've just mentioned. We have also seen in media reports that the community of Scenery Park have said, we did report this matter to the police. The CPF did take on this matter, and we only really saw authorities coming out once this tragedy occurred. So that's the situation that we have in our communities, and we really need to do more to ensure that our communities become alcohol safer.
And as you say, it's an emergency, it's an urgent situation. Thank you so much for your time. Do appreciate it. That's Terri-Liza Fortein, Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance spokesperson.